All right, so I'm sure some folks will kind of pile in as we get going here, but appreciate everybody taking their time to meet us for this Memphis 70.3 training webinar. We are like super psyched that this event is coming to Memphis, and our big hope is that this event coming to Memphis kind of elevates the entire triathlon scene as a whole. So we'll get rolling here. Oh, man. All right, so who we are BPC has been around since 2009. Bryant and myself founded the company, and I'm the head triathlon coach. Bryant is the head cycling coach. So we've been doing this full time for over 10 years, and we worked with hundreds of athletes, across all different experience levels and all different disciplines. Had some really amazing results out of people, but we also do work with a lot of people who are just getting into the sport, because realistically, without bringing more people into the sport of cycling, running, triathlon, those sports will eventually diminish. So just a few stats on us. You can kind of read them through the presentation here. You can also find out more about all of our coaches at our website, buildpeakcompete.com. So we do have, like I said, I'm the head triathlon coach. Brian's the head cycling coach. We also have Coach Heather, who is on here as well. She's an assistant tri coach. And then Coach Chris, who's sitting behind me, is our head running coach. And he also works with a lot of our youth athletes in our youth programs. So
brave enough to coach his wife. Yeah,
Chris is the only coach here that's brave enough to coach their spouse. So
it's true. That is very true.
And if you didn't know it, something interesting about Heather is that her house is on the Collierville Tacky Light Tour. So our big thing in training in general is to maximize results by optimizing what we call our 5 pillars of performance. And those are training and recovery. Those are the ones that, training is usually the one that people focus on the most and pretty much miss everything else. So we focus not only on the training, the plan, the work that you're going to do, but also the recovery in that. The last 4, the more new you are to the sport, the more these last 4 become important. So your efficiency and technique, nutrition and hydration, your equipment, and then also kind of dialing in some sport-specific skills. You can really have a great performance even as a first-timer if we kind of focus on all these things at once. The last thing that a lot of people kind of, once you get into the competitive part of the sports, your mental game can be huge. So that's kind of that bonus pillar there. So real quick, just so that you know that this is either this is for you or not. This webinar is kind of geared more toward people who are either new to the sport or doing their first 70.3. So ideally, you would be at least somewhat active in one of the 3 sports and or other forms of exercise, cardiovascular exercise. Obviously, if you're here, you're wanting to get to the start line injury-free and confident that you're going to have a good race. And those of you looking to have a finish that you're happy with. Now, in some instances, there are certain scenarios that maybe what we're going to outline isn't really for you. And those are people who are looking to do their fastest 70.3, like you have experience, you've done them before. I would never say your first one's going to be your fastest. So you can take that kind of off the table. But looking to do your fastest, if you're like completely inactive right now, this isn't really a couch to 70.3 guide. If you're like, you would consider yourself inactive, but you're still kind of physically active, you could probably use this outline. If you have a completely unpredictable life schedule, and a lot of people would say that they have this, but when we dig into a new athlete's life scenario, we actually find out that they have a lot of predictability to their day-to-day. And those really not wanting to do the work. If you really just want to, feel awesome and end up at the finish line magically, this is not for you.
Nor is doing a 70.3.
Yeah, exactly.
In general.
Yeah.
Just as a quick heads up, from those that actually signed up and filled out the information, all but 1, 2, 3 people, this will be their first ever 70.3. So vast majority, first ever 70.3, and about 1/3 of the people, so close to 20 folks, this is going to be their first triathlon ever.
Yeah, so that's that's awesome. I can't tell you how excited it makes us to have new people coming into the sport. If you fall into one of those last 4 scenarios, it can be done. Don't get discouraged, but you're probably just needing something a little bit more custom to you in your present scenario and your goals. So that's something that we can do. That's pretty much what we do day in and day out, is create custom training solutions for people to achieve whatever goal it might be. I mean, who knows? You may get done with this one and decide that you want to continue racing. You like the competitive atmosphere. You maybe want to do a full Ironman, whatever. That's what we specialize in: custom training plans. All right, let's get to it. So just so you know, this is what you're getting into as far as the event. A half Ironman is a 1.2 mile swim, somewhere around 2,100 yards, give or take. It's a 56 mile bike, and then a 13.1 mile run, or a half marathon. For first timers, and this is a rough statistic, for first timers, the average finishing time is somewhere between 6 and 7 hours. So it's a long day of work. During the training, and this is, our kind of where we like to get people to know that they're going to have, are confident in getting in the water on race day. Your longest pool swim will be roughly 2,000 yards straight. And keep in mind, this is a very steady progression. This is not day 1. This is not even day 90. So it's a very steady progression. Your longest bike during the training will be somewhere between 60 and 80 miles. If you are a cyclist right now, you're proficient in cycling, you've been doing it for a few years, you'll probably be on the higher end of that. Your longest run will probably be somewhere between 10 and 14 miles. Again, if you're a runner, you're probably going to be on the higher end of that, just because you have experience in that sport. Brick sessions for a half iron, your longest race simulation brick, and a brick is basically a bike ride immediately followed by a run. So your longest brick session will be somewhere between 50 to 60 miles, and then somewhere between 6 and 8 miles off the bike. And realistically, for long course racing, I don't give people that many of those big bricks. It'll be one time, and that'll be 4 weeks out. That'll be 4 weeks out from the race, just kind of as a race simulation, long race simulation. So don't think that you need to do the distance before race day. Don't think that you need to have done the full bike, full run, full swim before race day in succession. So while many of you might get to that level where you've completed a 56 mile bike at some point, a 2,000 yard swim, and a 13.1 mile run, you don't have to hit it to actually finish and feel good about your finish. All right, so kind of the training in a nutshell of what we have going on here. We're laying out basically a full season from January to October. So that's plenty of time to get ready. Actually, it's about 38 weeks. If we're starting in January, it's about 38 weeks. So we use what we call a double peak strategy. And double peak just basically means we prepare you for a goal event early in the season, then we take like a mental and physical recovery, and then we kind of get back to it and build up for the second event of the season. And what that does is it helps prevent, you from getting burnt out. It's, time and time again, the people that don't take that mid-season break, unstructured break, tend to struggle late in the year. So we're using what we call a double peak. It is an incredibly, the training that we're going to lay out is an incredibly conservative progression. So some of you may progress faster than this, but what we're trying to do is to avoid too much too soon injuries, overuse injuries, but we're also trying to give you and allow you some grace period to create these healthy habits and routines, because when you get down to it, you're going to be doing at least 6 sessions a week, upwards of 11 sessions a week. So working those into your day-to-day takes time. It takes time to learn where those fit in best and when you can get them done, and create the routines so that you can make sure that they get done. So it's a very, very conservative progression up through the first race. Ideally, what we're going to lay out is a lead into the Memphis in May Olympic triathlon, which is May the 16th. So the Memphis in May Tri has switched to Shelby Farms this year. So it's going to be the same venue and a lot of the same course, parts of the same course. So you'll get to kind of see, and if you're local, obviously you can basically train on course all the time. But you'll get to see parts of the course and actually do them, check them out in a race setting.
Regardless, let me jump in real quick. Regardless of whether or not you do that race, you may be from out of town. You're going to be able to find a race about that same time frame. It doesn't have to fall on the exact same date, but your stress levels on race day will be on half Ironman Memphis race day are going to be far less if you've done a triathlon before. So going into a stress-free first race, we don't want that to be the Memphis 70.3. So if you can work one in before then, it's going to help you out a ton going into race day.
Yeah, I recommend racing as much as possible between now and then, just to get the experience. But if you're local, Memphis in May is a must-do. If you're from out of town, we highly recommend it so that you can check out the course, see what Memphis has to offer. And it's like Brian said, knowing the course is a distinct advantage when you come back for the 70.3, because you're going to be familiar with the area, everything. So highly recommend doing that race. So again, after Memphis in May, there'll be a unstructured period for about a week where you can just do whatever. And then we're going to get back at it and do a second build for the 70.3. The training works in about 3 to 4 week blocks. And those blocks will have a similar focus. And then there will be some like specific repeating workouts that we'll throw in there over and over, so that one, it stimulates the body enough to adapt, but also for you, just to have some self progress. So tracking progress kind of if you're not a big data person, it helps track if you're getting better, if you're getting fitter, faster. So repeating workouts are, while most people can find it mundane, it really, really helps track that progress. So once again, you'll be doing at minimum 6 sessions a week. That would be like 2 swims, 2 bikes, 2 runs, as many as 11. And 11 usually falls under like 3 3 swims, 3 bikes, 3 runs, a couple of strength sessions, and then some of those can be moved around and switched, like having an extra run or an extra bike here and there. But it takes time to develop the routines to fit it all in. So again, pretty conservative. All right, I knew this question was going to come. Procrastinators, heed my warnings. When do I really need to start? If you are inactive, have no triathlon experience, no real experience in 2 out of the 3 sports, I would really start as soon as possible, just to give yourself plenty of buffer time to work, like I said, again, work in the routines, create the layout that works well for you. If you're consistent in like training 5 to 6 days a week in maybe 2 of the 3 sports, then like a lot of people bike and run. Swimming is usually the one that people avoid, put off. But if you are proficient in 2 of the 3, you can probably wait till February to kind of kick things off. If you are presently fit enough to do a sprint try, you could probably wait until March to really dial things up. If you're fit enough to do an Olympic try, and this means that you swim, bike, and run already, you could probably, train for Memphis in May as normal, and then start your build in June for the half. Again, you need enough time to allow for life to happen, though, and still get in the necessary training. Things are going to happen. Travel, vacations, work, family, things are going to happen, and it's always better to allow yourself a little bit more time to have those odd off weeks than to try to cram for the test and end up unhappy with your finish. All right, I'll put this in there before we get going on the training. Recovery is absolutely key. If you never recover, you'll never improve. In fact, you will just steadily decline. So you will need to take a recovery week about every 3rd or 4th week. Now, generally speaking, for like younger folks, like 3 to 4 weeks or every 4th week is a good recovery week. We've found a lot that like for older athletes, 50s, 60s and older, like every 3rd week generally is a good plan. So you do 2 weeks worth of work and then a recovery week, just because it takes a little bit longer to recover from the training. Now, while you're trying to get consistent up front, you really don't have to throw in a recovery week until you're like consistent for 5 to 6 days a week for 3 to 4 weeks. That's usually when the fatigue is built up enough to actually take a recovery week. And then if you stay consistent after that, then yes, you will want to put in one every 3rd or 4th week. On recovery weeks, you want to make sure that you're keeping the number of training sessions that you're doing fairly consistent. You're just cutting the volume and intensity out of those sessions. So it's usually about a reduction of about 30%. If you're only training for like 4 and 5 hours a week, then, that might be like, it might be like 20% or 10% reduction on a recovery week. So it's usually when you get into those higher volume weeks that the volume reduction is bigger. But the key there is just you have to put those in, pre-plan them, and know where they're going to be. All right, let's get at it. So again, we're laying this out from January to October. So basically what I did was break it into months. It doesn't always fall perfectly in a month, but I'm giving you basically the focus of most months here. So in January, if you're starting in January, your main goal is to basically work toward doing something 5 to 6 days a week. So something, anything, 5 to 6 days a week, and you'll ideally have one full off day. For most people, you got to have an off day. Occasionally you'll get people who do well with taking an off day, maybe once every 3 weeks or once every, 14 days or so. But generally, just for routine, having that same off day works really well for people. So your goal is to build it 5 to 6 days a week, and you're adding in short sessions, roughly 20 to 30 minutes long. You're trying to work towards 1 to 2 swims, 2 bikes, and 2 runs. Ideally, you could even sub one of those swims for strength training if you're limited to 6 sessions. And that strength training is going to help out more than that extra swim on the front end. Our note here is anything that you're not proficient in, keep those sessions to 20 to 30 minutes. Like if you're not swimming presently or not riding much presently, keep the sessions to 20 to 30 minutes. Just it's all about doing. Just get something done. If you're totally new to swimming, we would recommend finding some swim instruction up front, because that can really speed up the curve, because swimming is like the most technically demanding of the 3 sports. And building the fitness is actually the easy part. It's your technique that really determines your speed in the water. So getting some help up front can really speed up the learning curve. Now, if you are presently a cyclist or a runner, or you're proficient in one sport, then you can continue to do the duration that you're doing right now in those activities. So if you're used to running an hour on Tuesday and Thursday and a long run on Sunday, then keep doing it. It's no problem there. But the ones that you're not proficient in, don't just accelerate yourself too quickly.
And from an injury standpoint, for those that aren't running, so if you're a cyclist or a swimmer and you're starting to add in running, that's when you need to be the most cautious, because that's got the body has the most impact on that. And the muscles, the connective tissues, they're just not used to it. So start really slow when you're building that run in, if that's something you've not been doing. You can get away with going a little bit more on, a bike, just because that impact's lower, but be very cautious about trying to overreach too soon on that run.
For sure. The downside here is, if you're presently riding, you probably love to ride. If you're presently running, you probably love to run. So you may actually have to dial back the number of rides or runs that you're doing in a week to fit in the other sessions on the front end. So you'll have to, set your love for something aside a little bit, so we can start popping in these other sports. So that's the goal of January there.
That, and I'll just jump in real quick,
Yeah.
Dale. That, as someone who grew up just running and then jumped into doing duathlons, I found that by adding in biking and taking out a bit of running, especially as I've gotten older, that's really actually helped my running out when I went back to just running, because my body was just a little bit more recovered and fresher, and I developed mental toughness in ways by cycling that you just can't get in running. And so it helped me, once I started running again. So don't freak out if you've got to skip running days and do bike or swim. In the long run, it really helps out your running.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people find out actually that adding the cycling in is actually, they run better because the active recovery side of it is so helpful. All right, so we're talking about February here. So this is another 3 to 4 week block. Basically, the main goal is increasing frequency. And by that, I mean the number of times that you're swimming, biking, and running, not necessarily the duration of those sessions. So on the swim, I'll break it down in all the different factions here. In the swim, you're going to try to add in that second swim session. All right, if you aren't already. Those swims should pretty much be technically focused, all right? All technique. But you will want to add in one of those sessions. You're going to want to basically just go in and swim. I know it's very vague, but going in and swimming and working on how far you can swim without stopping, we have to develop some sort of endurance on the front end so that you can even focus on the technique. Because swimming obviously is in water, is really hard to focus on technique if you can't breathe. So it's really, really hard to focus on technique if you're struggling to breathe. So just going in and getting in some straight swim volume and getting the muscles and everything used to swimming is going to help your technique along the way. So technique and straight swim volume. On the bike, we want to add in that third bike. Our standpoint, and it's not just because we love cycling, is that the bike is kind of paramount to the race because it's the longest section of the race, and it's also the effort you put out on the bike determines how well you can run. Doesn't matter how good of a runner you are. If you go too hard on the bike or you're not fit on the bike, you're never going to be able to run your ability off the bike. So we want to add in that third bike as soon as possible. So on those bike rides, your main focus is just keeping steady pressure on the pedals. And we call it NSP, never stop pedaling. If you can do that, great. We understand you got to stop for stoplights and no cyclist has ever run a red light or anything like that. But make sure that you're stopping you try not to stop pedaling as much as possible. If you're on a trainer, it's kind of, that's what's going to happen. You know, if you're on an indoor trainer, you're going to be spinning the whole time. But if you're riding outside, do your best to keep pressure on the pedals. And the big reason why we had to keep harping on people on that is because once group rides start up, it's really easy to get into a group ride and draft forever. And you'll be surprised. People will spend literally 30 and 40% of a 2 and 3 hour ride not pedaling. And that is not what happens on race day. On a race day, you are on not a closed course, but a fairly closed course. So you are going to be pedaling from the start of that bike ride to the finish of that bike ride, minus a few turns. So we want to make sure that we, on the front end, start getting our body used to never taking breaks, if at all possible. So simple increase in volume. Basically during this block, you're going to increase your weekend long ride, which is usually where people put it on Saturday or Sunday. Weekend long ride by about 10 minutes per week. All right. So really, really, really simple progression. On the run, we're going to add in that third run if you're not already. You're going to focus on steady running. If you are a walk runner, you're basically just focusing on steady walk run interval and increasing the duration of that, increasing the duration of straight running within like these 30-minute sessions. So we haven't even, really increased the duration of the long run just yet. We're going to do that during this block, but it's really only going to be about 5 minutes per week. So again, really, really small increases in volume on the run, mainly because run is usually the one where people get in trouble. So real short, small increases. Now, strength training. Strength training is the one that people will avoid, most endurance athletes will avoid like the plague. So I don't want to beat pound the pulpit here, but you are going to have a better races if you do consistent strength training. All right, your body's going to be more prepared for it. The pounding of the road, the accumulated fatigue that you're going to get over weeks, months, whatever. So you're going to want to work in at least one full session, total body, and then hopefully work in a short, like at least some prehab stuff, which is basically you're doing activation exercises prior to actually getting hurt, just to make sure that those muscles are active. By the end of February, hopefully you're up to about 10 sessions per week. So within 2 months, we're kind of getting close to this, what we consider a full triathlon training load. Anything to add to that, Brian?
No, I think I think you nailed her there. I think kind of the big thing to think about is we start a lot of people, on the run where they're doing like 1 minute run, 1 minute walk. If you're very beginner to running, don't feel bad if you're going out there and doing one on, one off intervals to start with. That's totally acceptable. Your body's going to adapt to it, but that's the key. We want you to underdo it, see how sore you are the next day and the day after. If you weren't very sore, you can probably push that out a little bit. If you were like almost debilitatingly sore, which is totally common from folks that go out and overdo it, you need to scale back. So we're trying to avoid that. So don't be psyched out if you're having to do 1 minute on, 1 minute off, or even 2 minute run, 1 minute walk. That's totally fine for January. It's even fine for February. The body's gonna come around, and you should be able to progress that pretty quickly. Just don't overdo it that first month.
For sure. All right, so we're into March. Swim. Continue your technical focus. Technical focus in swimming doesn't go away. For the other two sports, we'll kind of transition out of really hard technical focus, but swimming, it never goes away because it's so important. So on your technical swims, breathing in head position, massive. It's huge. So hand entry is a big one. Just real quick, you just want to make sure that when your hand enters the water, it's in line with your shoulder and not across the midline of your body. Brian, you got something beeping over there?
Yeah, I'm trying to quit it. My stupid messages are going off.
So breathing in head position, hand entry, and then your catch, which is basically the setup to a pull. So it's not actually the pulling action, but more of the positioning of your arm prior to pulling. Those three things, if you rotate a session with those three focuses, you're going to be so much better off when you actually start to build volume in the water than people who just get in and just swim mindlessly. All right, so that technique session, we're going to try to sneak it up to about 45 minutes long. And then we're going to continue this straight swim increase. So in March, we're trying to work toward that straight swim volume, kind of getting up close to being able to swim 800 to 1,000 straight. All right, and that's without stopping, like grabbing walls and stuff like that. You can touch the wall to turn, but no real stoppage. On the bike, we're going to continue this increase of 10 minutes per week on the long ride. And then we're going to start to increase the volume of one of the weekly rides, and we're going to focus on cadence and pedal stroke technique. Now, those two things, you may ask how you do that. There's a lot of different drills that we can work on for cadence and pedal stroke technique. We teach it. We're doing our House of Pain class right now over the winter, and we spend the first 6 weeks or more just focusing on cadence and pedal stroke technique. So it helps tremendously. And then keeping in a fun ride, 45 minutes. Continue that like steady pedaling focus, but just going out and having fun. Running. Now we're going to start bumping the weekend volume by about 10 minutes a week, just because we've already given ourselves 2 months basically to kind of prep the body for more volume. Weekday run, focusing on technique. I mean, it's really, we're increasing volume in March, but the technique is a massive focus in March. Increasing volume by a weekday run of 5 minutes per week. And then if you're a walk runner, your goal on these like longer runs or just the easy runs is to focus on kind of trying to increase your run interval. So like Brian said, if you're going from 1 minute on, 1 minute off, you're going to try to go to 2 minute on, 2 minute off. or 90 seconds on, whatever, however much you can increase it and start to get comfortable with that little bit longer run stretch. Your strength training, this isn't going to change a whole lot throughout the season, but you're going to be focused on hips, glutes, and core. We want to make sure that all those big muscles, big prime movers are firing, because when they're not, that's when people get in trouble, because other muscles are going to try to compensate and take over. And that's where imbalances happen and we get stupid issues along the way. This is kind of where priority workouts will come in. So like if you're planning for yourself, or if we're planning for somebody, and we're putting 10 sessions or 11 sessions on a training program, we want to make sure that athlete knows which of those 10 sessions are priority. And so in this phase, anything that's long, like any of the longer workouts, and then anything that's technique based is priority. So if you can only get in 6 sessions a week, those are the workouts that you do. Anything there, Brian?
I think that's I think that nailed her.
All right, moving on.
We'll eventually kind of give a layout. I'm sure people are kind of curious about how you would lay out, Monday through Sunday. So like what days do you put a bike and a run, or what days do you put a swim? What days would you put strength? Kind of how to lay that out, but that's something we'll get to. If that's a question someone listening is asking, we'll kind of run through that for you.
Yeah, we can touch on that, and I didn't really put it in here just because it varies for everybody.
Yeah.
But I'll put in a typical. We'll add that at the end here. So April, we're into April, so we're gonna continue to increase the volume that you're doing each week, and then now we're gonna start to introduce these OTV runs, or off the bike runs. Some people, call these transition runs. Some people just consider it all brick workouts, but really it's just an off the bike run. So if possible, we're going to add in that third swim. All right. I would say a lot of, like, the majority of the people that we coach have trouble getting in 3 swims a week. Some people, it's fine. It's just it's not a want or not wanting to get it in. It's just scheduling, and the fact that you have to get to a pool and have that time to get changed, do the workout, get changed, and then go where you're going. But if you can add that third swim in, perfect. Continue the technical focus. Breathing and head position is huge. We will add in some kicking here. Most triathletes really stink. We'll keep it PG. Stink at kicking. Think that it's not useful. Think that they don't have to kick when they're swimming or racing. Not the case. Kicking helps with body position, but we just have to do it and work on it. And now we're going to start to work on some actual pulling and creating a lot of propulsion when we kind of pull the water. So we're continuing our straight swim progression, and ideally by the end of April, you're swimming somewhere between 1,500 and 1,650 straight. So 1,650, that mark is basically a 1,500 meter ish, or a mile swim. So that's kind of where we're shooting for by April. So now you're 4 months in, plenty of time. A lot of you may actually get there before April, but this is the kind of the goal here. If you get that third swim in, you can start to throw in some of the more, I would say, fun efforts, the harder efforts, the sets that vary intensity and distance. But if you only have 2 swims a week, keep working on your endurance and keep working on your technique. Bike, continue to increase the volume by 10 minutes a week. I think by now you're probably up in the, close to 2 hour mark, maybe slightly above 2 hours on your long ride. One weekday ride, we're going to increase the load of it, taking it to about an hour to an hour and 15. Now we're going to start to work in some what we call L3, zone 3 tempo. There's a lot of different ways to describe it. It's just an intensity. So we're going to start to work in different intensity into one bike a week with some more technical focus. So while previously it was all technical, now we're going to try to be technical, but also do some work on top of that. Continue the easy fun ride. If you can take it to 60 minutes, perfect. And then we're going to include these off the bike runs on our weekend ride. So all of your long rides in April will include running off of the bike, and you're going to start only about 10 minutes off the bike. Maybe not even, you may not even get a mile off the bike. And then we're going to increase that by about 5 minutes a week. On the run, we're going to go back to bumping the weekend volume by 5 minutes, and then focusing on technique, increasing the volume of a weekday run. And we're going to probably max that for right now at about 50 to 60 minutes. Continue to have an easy run, 30, 45 minute easy run in there. And then if you're a walk runner, continue to try to increase the duration of your run interval. Strength pretty much doesn't change, but ideally you would try to increase the resistance you're using on your lifts. So we are trying to increase strength. This is for those of you who are very data focused. If you're data people, if you got trackers and GPSs and all the doodads to track your training, by April, you will want to try to throw in some test sets. So that might be a 5K run race, might be a functional threshold power test, an FTP test on the bike. And then that might be what we use for swimming is a 400 yard and a 200 yard time trial. So those are just repeating tests that we can do to track progress, but also set our zones, our training zones, so that our training can be a little bit more focused. For most beginners, I say go by feel. Let's give you an idea of what L3 should feel like, what L2 should feel like. And then when you see those, you can just go by feel and learn more about your body. But nowadays, most people want the data and they want to be told just what to do, what pace to hit, what power to hit. All that's great, but you still will want to do a decent amount of your training by feel. All right, moving into May, my favorite month of the year. If you're not local, Memphis has an entire month of basically festival after festival, music fest, barbecue fest, obviously Memphis May Triathlon, Italian fest. So, there's one every weekend. May is a pretty busy month around here, and it also pretty much kicks off a lot of our local racing. So since we are kind of targeting a mid-May race, there's going to be some aspects in here of simulating a race environment. And then also we're trying to make sure that we're not doing too much leading into a goal race. We want to come into the race fresh. So you're going to continue your technical focus on swimming. Highly recommend, if at all possible, getting in the open water prior to the event day. Now, the open water for most people is like the biggest fear. It's what keeps them from doing the sport. So getting into the open water, if at all possible, prior to race day, especially if you plan on wearing a wetsuit, which is not something we'll get into today, but if you're going to wear a wetsuit, you're going to want to get into that wetsuit prior to event day. So get in the open water. We need to try to hit that straight swim somewhere between 1500 and 1650. You can continue to do that third swim. What I would do is change that third swim into a race simulation swim. So a couple things you can do that would be, one, you can swim a set in a lane with other people. So if you're doing a master's class or something like that, you're probably already doing that, but swim in a lane with other people, and then work on efforts where you go out harder and then settle in. Because even if you don't want to go out hard, while most races nowadays are a time trial start, so you're just kind of going one every 3 to 5 seconds, it's still going to be a harder start. Your adrenaline's going to be running. You're still going to have to kind of move around some people. Practice going out hard, getting your heart rate up, and then settling into an easier pace. Those are key sessions leading into a race, if you want to be really comfortable with that type of effort. On the bike, we're going to continue to increase the weekend volume by 10 minutes per week until 2 weekends before the event. Not the weekend before, but 2 weekends before. We have a lot of issue with keeping that straight with the software that we use, whether it's this week or anyways. So 2 weekends before the event, you're gonna continue to increase that volume. You're probably upwards of 2 hours and 10, 2 hours and 20 at this point, maybe even 2.5 hours on the bike as your longest bike. So you will have done plenty of mileage to complete this Olympic distance race. 1 weekday ride of 60 to 75 minutes, continuing our L3 work and technique focus. Keep that fun ride in there. Dial it back a little bit to 45 just to keep some active recovery in there. And then we're still including that we're still including that off the bike run after the long rides. So this is when those long runs that you've been doing will basically turn into a brick workout. And so you're going to continue on your easy runs during the week, 45, 60 minutes. And then one of those runs can be focused more on, more race effort intervals. This is kind of where you hear the term speed work and track days and all this stuff. But one of those runs can be focused on doing faster pace intervals. And if you're doing walk run, you can already kind of mesh that into your walk run system and just do a fast interval walk. But at this point, you'll really want to kind of lock in your walk run pattern and stick to it until after the event is over, just to get your body's used to it. So we don't want to change too much too late in the game. So on that weekend, instead of doing like an hour and a half, or hour and 15 run workout, we're going to change that over to doing a couple of race simulation workouts. So you'll probably do an hour on the bike with some tempo, which is basically L3. And then you're going to run off the bike, starting with about a 2-mile effort, because you would probably gotten close to that with those OTB runs that we've been doing. Off the bike, 2 miles, and then we're going to add a mile each week. You'll probably finish at 4 miles. So an hour bike with some work, and then you'll probably run up to about 4 miles. Now that's not the equivalent of an Olympic triathlon, which is basically a 1,500 meter swim, which is close to a mile, 24.85 or 40K or 25-ish mile bike, and then a 10K run, which is 6.2 miles. So you won't have ran off the bike that far, but trust me, you're ready to do that if you've already progressed based on our recommendations here. Leading into the race, you're going to kind of change your strength training a little bit, focus a little bit more on mobility and range of motion, just keeping muscles active and loose. But it doesn't change. We're still hip, glute, and core focus. Obviously, we recommend doing Memphis May, but like Brian said, if you're not local or can't make it over here, there's a ton of races in May. And you can pop in if you want to along the way. Even in April, you can pop in some shorter sprint races just to kind of get your feet wet and get some experience. There is no better form of training than racing. So you're going to learn a ton just by jumping in and doing it. All right. Now, just a few things. I'm going to roll through this real quick. Just things about kind of nailing the event. 2 weeks out, we're going to reduce the volume so that we can get more recovery. The week before the event, we're reducing more volume. So you're basically only training at what you would race at or super easy, okay? The week of the event, you're only doing enough to keep your legs kind of awake and loose and fresh. The worst thing you can do on a race week is too much. So we're dialing it back. We're going to kind of keep the same number of sessions again, but it's maybe even slightly less than a recovery week. The day before an event, you're going to want to do a little bit of course recon. Again, knowing the course is a distinct advantage. If nothing else, it helps calm nerves on race day. So make sure that you are going in and doing a little bit of course recon. 15 to 20 minutes of each sport will do, and then you'll be ready to rock. Big pro tip here is make sure that you get good sleep 2 nights before the race, because the chances of you sleeping well the night before a race, if you've never done it before or it's totally new to you and you're not going to probably sleep well. So getting good sleep 2 nights before is the best way to go about it. Don't overhydrate. You don't prehydrate with just water. If you're going to prehydrate, you're going to make sure that the fluid has electrolytes in it. Don't try any new food. Like, the worst thing you could do would be go try a new restaurant. Try to avoid foods that upset your stomach. It's just, there's bad things happen to good people when you change things up the night before a race. We've all been there. We learned the hard way, but we'll keep reminding people, because it's never good to have to make a porta-john stop in the middle of a race.
Yeah, don't go vegan the week of the race. That might be I'm going to try that after.
One big thing here, obviously, is making sure you know the logistics of the race, how you're going to get there, where you're staying, all travel, have all your stuff, lists, like all that stuff. Get all that stuff done ahead of time, because that's going to really help kind of reduce anxiety on race day. I mean, it's night and day. The worst thing you can do is go in not sure of something, and the stress that will induce can really take a toll on your performance. So make sure you have fun, and make sure that you just trust your training and know that you've done the work to get to the finish line. After this goal race, this is when we're going to take our unstructured week. You're not going to lose fitness. If anything, your brain's going to recover from all the structure and training you've been doing. Hopefully by the end of the week, you're chomping at the bit to get back at it. That's our main goal. But you got to take it. If you don't take this unstructured week, then you can really have to battle it mentally later down the road. All right, moving on. We're in June. We're going to get back at it, getting back to consistency. Sometimes when we take a week unstructured, it's easy to go back to old routines and fill our time with things that aren't really going to help us get to the finish line in October. So we'll take a week to kind of get back at it, get back to consistency. But then we're going to start increasing volume again. And now, since you're no longer really, you've kind of got some more experience, we're going to kind of work in some of these, what we call speed skills, not necessarily speed work, but just things that help increase leg turnover, increase cadence, increase arm turnover in the water. We're going to work on some speed skills that are going to help us actually start to get faster on the front end here. So technical focus in the water is back. We're going to start to do a volume build set instead of just swimming straight all the time. That becomes very boring and mundane. So we're going to do a combo set and increase the volume of that one set to roughly 3,000 yards. So in a set, you're going to be swimming well beyond what a half iron would be. But that way we can vary the efforts and kind of keep your brain fresh on things. You can add third swim with the harder intervals if you have the time, or just more technical focus. On the bike, we're back to building long ride volume of 10 minutes per week. We're going to keep our weekday ride in there, 60 to 75 minutes, but we're going to change it to a little bit harder effort. We're going to pepper in some zone 4 and 5, which is really what we consider threshold or above threshold, which are pretty hard efforts. Just put it that way. They're hard efforts. But what that's doing is helping our body get better at adapting to those hard efforts that are going to happen anyways. So like when you come to a little hill, or you have to accelerate out of a turn, or something like that. Like those are the things that people don't think about, and they just ride steady all the time. But those things happen in races, whether you want them to or not. So we're going to work on some of those harder efforts way out from the event so that we can get more specific to the event as we get closer. So harder efforts on the bike once a week, one easy, fun ride. And then we're going to kind of bring back that off the bike run of 15 to 20 minutes. On the run, we're building, this is where it kind of changes over. We're building weekend run volume, but we're going to start doing this based on distance. Now, at this point, you've ran over 6 miles. So because the distance and time, like things vary so much for people, we're going to start using distance as our means for measuring our long run. And it may take somebody, 6 miles may take somebody an hour, and it may take another person 45 minutes. So, but we need to start getting closer and closer and more specific to the goal race that we're training for. So we're switching over to distance. We're going to start it at about 6 miles, and we're going to increase that over this block by about half a mile a week. So in June, increasing the long run by about half a mile a week. Still got your easy run in there, just volume, getting that body used to, the fatigue, the built up fatigue. And then now's where we're going to start working in that speed skills on the run. And these are things like, if you've heard of stride outs or just working on drills and butt kicks and stuff like that. Hill running helps, all this kind of stuff that's going to help our heel lift and our leg extension, which, it's still speed work. It's just not going out on the track and doing, a ton of intervals on the track. If you're a walk runner, go back to trying to increase your run interval. Kind of we're back at it. But from this point on, you're not really going to get any big brick workouts because the volume is going to grow. And to the point where brick workouts outside of races are a bit risky. So you're going to basically have your off the bike runs, off your long ride, which are going to be easy and are going to grow, but we're not going to do a dedicated brick workout on the Sundays anymore. Back to building that run volume. We're going back into range of motion and mobility with our strength work. And then again, you can pepper in other races as you see fit. The limitation to that is once we get closer to like September, you're not going to want, or August and September, you're not going to want to sacrifice a long ride or run for a very short race at that point. There are ways to do that. A lot of like if you're adding in races during like mega volume, like when we get into the highest volume weeks, that's just when you don't want to sacrifice for a shorter race. But you can adapt those days by like adding riding or running after a race if you're prepared to do that. All right. Into July, technical focus in the water. I mean, it's going to continue on. If you are one who can get in the open water, now's the time to really focus on working on your sighting. And that just means being able to look up and see where you're swimming at times so that you can swim a straight line. Most swimmers, I would say most swimmers, but like most new triathletes swim like this. They swim all over the map. And the best ones swim pretty straight toward the buoys. So work on your sighting and then work on turns. I didn't put that in here, but going around buoys if you have one to go around. Continuing that combo set, still working on bringing that up to about 3,000 yards, or you can even go over that at this point. Bringing in that third swim of those harder intervals is really going to kind of boost up your overall swim fitness. Strength work, we're back to increasing the load. So we're rebuilding our absolute strength by increasing the resistance in our lifts. On the bike, now we're going to start to bump our long ride volume by about 15 minutes per week. At this point, you're going to end up having ridden 3 hours, around 3 hours or more. But because of the progression we've done, you won't even really notice that you're already, riding 3 hours. It is July after all. It's, we're 7 months in. 1 weekday ride, we're going to back the effort down a little bit, but we're going to start to work on low cadence. We're building sport specific strength. So we're building our ability to push a big gear on the bike. That's going to help you go uphill better. It's going to help you on sustained efforts. So we're going to work a little bit of low cadence at or below threshold. So L3, L4, tempo, threshold, however you want to describe it. It's comfortably hard and hard. So we're going to keep working those intervals once a week. Long, steady intervals. So keeping in our fun ride, but if we can, we're going to increase the volume of that ride just to have some more bike volume. Keep those 20-minute OTB runs coming, and those legs will stay awake and used to running off the bike. So on the run in July, we're going to start building the weekend run volume and increase that by a mile a week now. So we're really starting to bump it up. Keeping that, the easy run during the week will increase a little bit in volume. So we're going to be doing 60 to 75 minutes for one run during the week. And then on your kind of your technical run, it's going to be more focused on run strength. So that means hill work. Hill work is, I call it speed work in disguise, because the stronger you get at running hills, and what we're really trying to get there is pushing backwards, the movement of pushing backwards. The stronger you get at running hills, the faster you're going to be on the flats. So hill work is a tremendous advantage, especially since the course that you're going to be doing in October is not completely flat. If you've ever ran the loop at Shelby Farms, it's basically short, punchy hills. They're all very short. None of them are, what do you say, Chris, longer than, 50 yards?
Yeah,
nothing.
Maybe. There's, there's one I'm thinking of that might feel longer than that. The steepest part of it's 50, but then it drags up a little bit longer after that. But yeah, they're short and steep and punchy is the best way to describe them. there's some good flat sections, but it's like the Ironman says, it's a rolling course, and the hills are short, steep, and punchy.
Yeah. So having that run specific strength is really going to help. You kind of punch up over those hills, and they won't even barely phase you if you do the work.
One thing you could practice too in running is, some of the hills you go running downhill can certainly have a big effect on your performance as well. And on most of the hills that you run up, as I'm thinking through the run course, there aren't too many steep downhills, but if you pace yourself appropriately on the up and work on cadence on the way down, you can equal out the time that you might have lost going up. But practice running down some hills as well, just to get a feel for it. It's one of the better skills to learn as a runner and a triathlete too.
Absolutely. If you're, not to go too far off track here, but if you are doing an endurance event, downhill running will impact your body more than any uphill you'll do. So like Chris said, if you're doing hill intervals, you can run up the hill with the form that we're looking for, pushing back, but you can run back down the hill working on leg turnover, and you kind of get a twofer. You get work on leg turnover, but then your body gets used to handling the pounding of downhill running. If you're a walk runner, it is time to lock in your walk run interval, because we're about to start practicing race pace, all right, or race effort. Now, nutrition and hydration is going to be important the entire time. Pain train. Nutrition and hydration is important the entire time. But this is really when you have to start dialing it in. I didn't want to get into it in a whole nother conversation on nutrition and hydration, because that is literally an entire webinar on its own. Actually, nutrition's one, hydration is another. But anyways, dialing it in on these weekend longer sessions, now is the time when we have to start dialing in everything at effort, the amounts, the timing, all that kind of stuff. Because if you're very new, you may not know this, but in long course racing, nutrition and hydration is the fourth sport. Fueling is the fourth sport. And if you do not stay up on it, it doesn't matter how fit you are, you will blow your entire race because you run out of juice. So dialing in your nutrition and hydration starting in July is going to be extremely important. All right. So at this point, realistically, you are no longer a beginner. You've already gone through an Olympic race, and we're getting into some decent structured training. I trust that you can take it. At this point, we're 7 months in. You'll be well prepared for it.
And I would recommend from the cycling side of things here, this would be a great time to start working in some hills as well. That's going to naturally give you some low cadence work, but the kind of the middle section of this race course has some kicker hills on it that are going to wear on you. So getting in some of that hill work that's going to push your intensity up and force you to push harder on your longer rides is going to start setting you up for success.
For sure. And realistically, if you're local, ride the course as much as you can. Run the course as much as you can. I mean, there's no better. If you are a local, you have a distinct advantage because you have the course at your disposal at all times, aside from the lake. But we're working on that. So yeah, ride and run the course as much as you can. All right. So this is probably what most people are wanting to hear about more than anything is like, what is the max that you're going to have to do to make this event work? So mega volume, we call it, is basically just the maximum, the weeks with the largest training load that you'll want to do to have a decent finish at this race. And this is going to basically kind of be the tail end of August into early September, because we don't necessarily want to be piling on a bunch of volume too close to the race. Again, we don't want to cram for the test. We want to have the volume in our system and then allow the body to recover and adapt to that and actually get fitter before the race. So August into early September, you're going to be doing your longest swim somewhere in there. That light just kicked back on. Longest swim, still technical focus, but you're bringing, and we're bringing back straight swims, right? So getting very race specific. So you're going to want to go back, and we're going to work toward doing a straight swim of about 2,000 yards. Now you can transition that mixed set over to your third swim and have that kind of mixed interval swim of 2,000 to 3,000. But for most people, having that straight swim in there is the confidence booster they need to walk up to the start line on race day and know that they can knock it out. So bike, longest bike, you're still building run volume by about 15 minutes a week. And depending on how, depending on where you are, things happen, we miss this, that, and the other sometimes, but this will probably cap out at about 4 hours. So you're going to be riding. This is like, if you want to have be well prepared to run off the bike, you'll cap it out at about 4 hours. Some people may only hit 3. Either way, you're going to be fine. But that's kind of the cap. So the longest bike in there will be somewhere between 3 and 4 hours. I'll say 3.5. You're still going to have that 1 weekday ride in there of 60 to 75 minutes of these L3, L4 efforts. So tempo to threshold. That is, again, like Brian said, ride some hills. You'll get those efforts in. If you can go out and ride the rollers, ride hills, you'll get those L3, L4 efforts in, and you won't have to think about it. You'll still have that easy, fun ride, but we want to try to get that easy ride a little bit longer. So we're just piling on a lot of fatigue, a lot of training to simulate how the body's going to feel on race day. So this is where we're going to start off the bike runs being a little bit longer. You might have gotten in some more races between Memphis and May, or the May race and now. So we're going to start those at about 3 miles. And right now we're going to max them at 6, all right, during this mega volume block. Your runs, this is when you're going to be doing your longest run as well. They don't all happen on the same week. I'll put that in there. A lot of people think, am I going to end up doing my longest swim, bike, and run on the same week? Generally not. It can happen if that's just the way it rolls for you. But generally, they'll be set, each of the longest swim, bike, and run will be like in 1 week of this like 3 to 4 week block. So you're building your run volume. You're still building it by 1 mile a week. At this point, your longest run will end up being 13 to 14 miles. Some people may get 10, some people may get 12. It depends how consistent you were during the training buildup. But ideally, you're somewhere around 13 to 14 miles on your longest run. And that would be like all you did for the day was that one run. During the week, you want to try to get in another easy run of 60 to 75 minutes. And then you'll have one 60-minute run that is going to be focused on those more like what we call speed endurance or tempo efforts. Just, slightly elevated pace for longer periods of time. Now, keep in mind, this is only from January to October. We have this small window where we're just going to pile it on. So you have to basically plan ahead of time. That's why we're laying this out. Look at your calendar, plan ahead of time on what weeks are going to fit best to do these and complete these mega volume weeks. Because you can't miss the long stuff and expect to have a good race day. So we've got to get these mega volume weeks in. And then once these are over, I mean, you could probably do the race in the next weekend or the next week. But this is like the culmination of the training right here is these mega volume weeks. If you're a walk runner, keep going, lock that pace in from the gun on these long runs, and just practice. You can sneak up your pacing a little bit on the run intervals, but just lock it in at this point. Ideally, what we try to shoot for a lot of people who walk run is trying to basically run to the next aid station and then walk through the aid station. The aid station, that way you can walk, make sure you get your fluids and your fueling, and then run to the next one. That works really well for a lot of people. But depending on your pace, that could mean 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 minutes running and then walking. So that's just kind of a general guide there. We are practicing race day nutrition and hydration to the T on all of these long workouts during the weekend. All right. So ideally, you're going to wake up early because this race is going to start early. You're going to have everything ready. Get your fluids and fueling all prepped. And you're going to be ready to roll early in the morning. Right. And you're going to execute your nutrition and hydration to the T on both your long bike and off the bike run and your long run. Now, you're going to do some fueling on those off the bike runs because even if you don't need it for like that duration, even if you don't need more fuel for a 4-mile run, we want you practicing fueling off the bike because your body is still going to be kind of revved up from the bike, and things that you're eating off the bike may or may not agree with you when you start to run. So we have to test it at, kind of a race effort to make sure that things are dialed in. So practice that race day nutrition. Now, one thing I will add in here, even if you are a person who handles well or handles a 3 up, 1 down, or what we call 3 weeks of work and 1 recovery week, even if you handle that really well, when we get into these mega volume weeks, you may need to dial it back to 2 weeks of really, really hard mega volume and then a recovery week. For some people, that works really well. Even for family's sake, that works really well because then you only have basically a two weeks that you're having to move things around to get these big workouts in, and then a down week, and then you get 2 more of these big weeks in. So sometimes you have to kind of change your routine a little bit to get in the recovery and obviously also keep the household happy. Anything else there, Brian? Oh, you're muted. I got you. Nope. I'm unmuted. I got it. I think the big thing to notice here is as you're going into this mega volume, the intensity has been cut. So you're not doing that zone 4, zone 5 above threshold work. So you're building volume out. Scale back your intensity a little bit if you need to avoid injury there. Yeah, most of the stuff, again, when you get into mega volume, it returns to like mostly a beat just about doing and about getting the time and the duration in. It's not, if you're ready for some like tempo work and stuff like that, great. If not, just get the time in and just do the time and get the time on your feet, on the bike, and in the water. But we just have to, what we're trying to do here is to simulate and put a lot of fatigue on your body to simulate race conditions. So realistically, if you do 3 of these, by the end of that third week, you're going to have so much fatigue built up that long bike and that long run are going to feel very similar to race day, just because of accumulated fatigue. That's how we train for epic events like this, long events. We'll never do the distance completely beforehand, but we're gonna get you ready by accumulating fatigue over 2 and 3 weeks. All right, the last bit, the taper, race simulation. not the time to freak out. That is the common thing. Really, I'll be honest. Endurance athletes in general lose their ever-loving mind a couple weeks from a race. It's worrying about if they're done enough, if they're doing enough. Like everything comes to culmination, and you're like, just freak out. So this is not the time to do that. Right now, kind of in this like late September, mid to late September, all we're trying to do here is refine everything about the race. So open water skills. If you can get in open water, work on your sighting, your turns, dealing with other athletes in the water. Again, get back in a lane with somebody, swim with somebody else. You can even do this. Like I've done this thing with people before where we'll take all the pool toys, and your pool may not like this. So don't take all the pool toys and just throw it in one lane and then have to swim through it all. Like it sounds dumb and it looks dumb and people will wonder what the heck you're doing. But to get used to like having to deal with stuff in the water, like it's actually a pretty good drill.
It's even more fun to throw it into someone else's lane and see what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. Have people stand at the end and beat you with a noodle. That'll prepare you for open water swimming. So we're going to get in our last straight swim of 2000. At this point, you've probably done it. You might have done it even once before. So we're going to kind of get in one last, good straight swim, confidence booster swim. You can even do this in your wetsuit. If I will say the race may not be wetsuit legal. Chances are, though, it will be. But you can even do this last set in your wetsuit in the pool just to, get used to it. If the pool's warm, you're not going to want to because you'll probably just cramp up and sweat it all out. But ideally, get in the open water, test the wetsuit out, and get in this last 2000 straight. Generally, if you do it without a wetsuit, you're going to be more confident anyways. Strength, we're kind of dialing it back to more just core and mobility work. And that way, again, everything stays activated. You stay flexible, loose, balanced, all that good stuff. So the bike in September, 2 weekends out, we're going to hit our longest off the bike run. For some people, that'll be 6 miles. For some people, it'll be 8 miles, but you're basically going to do that off of roughly a 3-hour bike. All right. So you're going to go out, ride for 3 hours, and then you're going to get off the bike and you're going to run somewhere between 6 and 8 miles. That bike should have a little bit of work in there. But for most people, it's a steady 3 hours and then running off the bike. That is the closest you'll come to running the distance that you will do on race day. So I'm just going to put this in there. Do not run 10 plus miles off the bike prior to race day. The risk is not equal to the reward. It's not even close. The juice is not worth the squeeze. So just make sure, cap it at 8 miles. You'll be a lot happier. So 1 weekday ride still in there. We're going to throw in a little bit of tempo. The volume is dialing back. That's a big thing to note here. You're cutting some of the volume out of your weekday stuff, but we are adding a little bit of load there with some intensity. Keep that fun ride. We're dialing it back to about 45 to 6 minutes. Your long ride volume the weekend before is going to be no more than 2 hours. So October 3rd, the weekend before, no more than 2 hours, but that ride can have a little bit of intensity in it to kind of keep the legs fresh, fired up, and ready to rock. Again, like I said, we're not doing any major brick workouts here. Your runs off the bike, I don't consider those brick workouts. To me, brick workouts are structured intervals of bike and run, not just ride then run. anyways, run, dialing, you're going to dial the long run back. We've already done our longest run. We're not going to risk getting hurt by continuing to do long runs all the way up to the race. We're dialing back the long run, but what we want to do is we want to put in some strong finish. We'll call it that way. We'll say tempo, but all I want you to do is practice finishing strong. So while you may have just completed a 2-hour, let's say 2-hour run, we're dialing that back to 75 minutes to 90 minutes, but on that back half, you're going to finish the last 15 to 20 minutes strong. All right, we're practicing building that effort and having some juice left at the end. So good pacing. During the week, easy run, dial it back to an hour. 45-minute run on the week. We can do some kind of tempo stuff in there just to add a little bit of load and keep the legs turning over quickly. And then if you're a walk run person, you're still just locked into your interval. Again, we're still focused on all of these long workouts, focused on practicing our nutrition and hydration to the T. Basically, you're going to be doing, in this phase, you're going to be doing either race simulation or painfully easy. We want to make sure that our body is recovering well in these last 2 to 3 weeks before the event. And then once again, you're coming into race week. The worst thing you can do is too much. So kind of already gone over some of this stuff. This is just a review. I've already put this slide up here, but you're going to do your course recon the day before. Get some good sleep, hydrate with electrolytes, eat normally, no new foods. This one more so than any other race, make sure you have your logistics figured out because Ironman events don't run exactly the same as an average triathlon, just in terms of having to check your bike in the night before and the race day bags that they give you and what you have to put in each of them and stuff like that. That's stuff that you got to know ahead of time because that's going to reduce anxiety. Have fun, trust your training, know that you've done the work to get to the finish line with arms raised and not waste your finish line photo.
They don't be doing this.
Look, I tell every person that we coach, the last thing I tell them before they go and do a race is don't waste your finish line photo.
Think it through. Think through your move you're going to do across the finish line.
I collect them, actually. People send them to me and I collect them. I have some really good ones. I actually had a guy, this is off. He finished a marathon. I think it was he finished Oceanside 70.3 and he went to jump and do like a side jump heel click thing. And when he hit the ground, or when he stepped down, he rolled his ankle and smashed down underneath the finish line. And the only thing that the photographer caught was him like laying on the ground, like in a heap.
Don't be that person.
It was a good one. But he sent it to me anyways, said it didn't waste it. So by this time, I promise you've done the work. And look, race day is just going to end up being a long training day. I mean, you're going to be so well prepared for this that, you're just going to reap, basically you're cashing in your chips, and just the reward is race day. All right. So we alluded to this, but we are in fact doing a Memphis 70.3 training group. We're going to actually launch it today. This is kind of, we wanted to get this webinar out there first. So the easiest things you can do to get your training kind of where it needs to be, if I haven't thoroughly confused you, I hope I didn't. I hope I put in some good structure, and you can always roll back this thing if you want to like write notes You can get the recording as well if you're into structuring your own training. Obviously, there's a trillion free training plans online. And my only warning there is that some are better than others. Some are written by people that know what they're talking about, and some aren't. But almost none of them are tailored to you and your present ability and or this specific race and, conditions and all that kind of stuff. So just, there are a lot of good ones. So I'm not going to try to scare you away from, if you want to do a free training plan, go for it. Our major goal right now is to get more people into this race, into the sport, and loving the sport to see it grow. You can grab the training plan that we are developing for this specific race. Again, this is the training plan we basically use to write this webinar off of, write the structure of this webinar off of. Right now, it's going to start January 6th. The plan starts January 6th, just to let everybody get past the holidays, New Year's, all that stuff. It's about 38 weeks, goes from January to race day, and that program will be for sale for $99. And it basically is tailored to, it's going to lead you into Memphis in May. It's going to make you take a break, and then it's going to lead you into the 70.3. Something with a little bit more support, which is something we're really excited about because, again, this race, if you're new, you may not understand it, but this race is a huge deal for the Memphis triathlon community. So we are starting a training group. So that's the plan that I was just outlining. And then you're also going to get a lot of extra support from us and our entire coaching staff along the way. And that's going to be $49 a month. And it's going to basically go from January until October. So I guess it's nine payments, $49. It'll cut itself off once we get to that last month. So the training group, basically you get that 38-week plan. It's kind of tailored for a really, really, conservative progression based for beginners and first timers. It's going to be supported by the entire coaching staff at BBC, myself, Bryant, Chris, Heather, including our good buddy and multi-time and national world champ, Kirsten Sass. She's going to be helping us out with the group as well. Wealth of knowledge. I would say maybe the nicest person in the world, most humble person to a fault. And I've never seen her racing without a smile on her face. So she's also a great resource that we're going to have for the group. We're going to be doing probably about eight to nine more of these webinars and allow some question and answer, especially, for those of you who aren't even to this minute, probably aren't even really sure what you're getting into. So lots of question and answer there. We got a private Facebook group. If you're a Facebooker, I'm assuming if you got to this webinar, you probably use Facebook. So we're gonna have a private Facebook group for everyone to be involved with, so that you can get questions answered quickly. Help with motivation. We give out a lot of kudos and virtual high fives, but also to kind of help organize some group training opportunities, or let us help you get plugged into the Memphis triathlon community, so that you can find some more groups to train with and folks to train with and meet and everything. Because realistically, the Memphis endurance community and triathlon community honestly rivals some of the biggest triathlon cities in the world. It may not be obvious to you yet, but we have a fantastic community here. So we can help you get dialed into that. We're going to be doing some training camps and clinics along the way. Clinics would be one-day things where we're going to work on, I'll detail that stuff in a second, but you'll get discounts being part of the training group on training camps, clinics, services. We're going to do a bike course preview ride where the coaches will be out there. We're going to kind of roll you through the bike course. That'll probably be planned for one of the longer rides toward the end of the training program. We'll do a pre-race meetup where we'll meet up Thursday evening before the race to kind of, we'll be there to answer questions and, kind of make sure everybody's got all their ducks in a row and ready to rock and roll. Little BBC swag, and then also we're gonna have a option. You can order a training group racing kit just to make sure that you have the, if you don't have any triathlon specific clothing, that'll be an opportunity for you to get some clothing to race in. Just some topics of the webinars we're going to end up doing. Equipment, massive. There's a lot of people worry about not having the right stuff. Is it enough? Do they need this, that, and the other? So we're going to be covering what's needed, what's not, and how dialing that stuff in can really benefit your performance. We're going to, like I said, training and racing nutrition is a whole webinar. Very individualized topic, so we'll cover it as deeply as we can. Training, racing, hydration is a bit of a expertise of ours, so we'll be going over that and helping everybody dial in their hydration strategies. Keys of injury prevention. We're going to go through all that stuff. That's proper recovery, strength training, flexibility. We can even cover some things as far as foam rolling and massage and stuff like that, just to help with injury prevention, because nobody wants to sign up for an epic event and end up having to, can their race because they got hurt. We'll be talking about efficient transitions. It's a little specialty of mine. I do enjoy a good fast transition. And for those of you who don't know what that is basically you transitioning from one sport to the next. So from swim to bike and then from bike to run. We'll be talking about the mental side of training and racing, how we can keep it fun but still perform well. We're going to be doing a Memphis 70.3 course rundown. We're going to talk about the swim, the bike, the run to the T, and make sure that you know all about it and are, it'll be the next best thing to actually going out and doing the course yourself. And then we're going to be talking about all those pre-race logistics that, that one may be early on, but we're going to be talking about all the pre-race logistics that you're going to need to kind of know to kind of better prepare you for race day and reduce those race day anxieties and just make sure that, cool as a cucumber walking up to the start line. Let's see here. So real quick, camps and clinics that we always do a running technique clinic. We're working on a swim technique clinic. We always do a transition clinic. We're working on an open water swimming clinic. We'll on late April, we'll be doing a training camp. That's usually just the weekend, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The first one will most likely be sprint Olympic distance focused since we're early season. We're going to do a lot of technique work, and you're going to get a lot of coach feedback on that technique. Last year, we did a volume camp in September. We're working on locking in the date on that. That one was focused on more of getting in a lot of volume with a group, working on some technical things as far as swimming goes. But for the most part, we got in a lot of volume, and people that were doing late season halves and fulls. We got tons of great feedback on that and how it had everybody really well prepared for the races that they were doing. So that's something that you also, as a part of the training group, get a discount on. Boom. Trust your training. If you stick around long enough, you'll hear us say it, 10 million times. And we hope to see you guys at the finish line. We hope the webinar was fairly helpful at least. And if you have any questions on it, don't hesitate. Shoot us a note. Any of the, like, email, you can send us a Facebook message, whatever. Just, get in touch. And if you are interested in the training group, you can just jump on our website, buildpeakcompete.com, and you can find the link to that on the website, and join us. We hope you do. So we appreciate everybody taking the time to stick with us here, and hopefully we'll hear from you soon.